Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 1 of the Debt Free Dad podcast. Coming up in this episode, it is a brand new year, brand new decade. And today we're going to be sharing tips on how you can crush 2020 and how to have the best financial year of your life. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Debt Free Dad podcast, where we're helping normal, everyday people learn how to save money and kick debt so they can live a happier and stress-free life. Now, here's your host, Debt Free Dad, Brad Nelson.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's episode and happy New Year. Happy 2020. We are so excited to be kicking off the brand new year with all of our listeners and kicking off this podcast with our official first episode. We are so glad that you are going to be joining us here today. I am joined by my 2 co-hosts as always. Amber Taylor, how are you doing?
I am fantastic, Brad.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. And Ryan Nelson, how you doing, man?
Awesome. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So today, guys, we're going to be talking all about the new year. How do you guys feel that it's 2020? I mean, how does that feel to you right now? It's crazy. I think time goes faster as you get older. There's no question about that.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm not getting older, so the new year feels pretty good.
I don't know. I've just had a young daughter back in 2018, and I'm 40 now, so I'm feeling old.
Well, I know for me, 2020. I mean, it always goes by fast, but this January for me marks being debt free. This coming January of 2020, it'll be a 8-year journey that's been complete. And so, although the year's gone fast, it's been a long road, and so I'm excited to kickstart 2020 this year.
Yeah, that is awesome. Congratulations to you. We're going to have to do a whole show on that whole story, and you're going to have to share a little bit of your experience, but that's awesome. You say 8 years?
8 years.
Yeah, that is awesome. Good for you. Proud of you guys, and it'll be an awesome celebration, and it becomes almost like an anniversary. It always is for our family. It's awesome. So being that it's a brand new year, like, do you guys do like the whole resolution thing?
I used to do resolutions, but then after a couple of weeks, it would be kind of like, oh, forget about that. I'll start again next year.
What kind of resolutions would you do, Amber? Like, what kind of things would you work on?
Mostly it was health stuff. But now I've just kind of decided that I'm going to make a plan. I'm going to go for my goals, and it doesn't matter what time of year. I'm just going to start them when I'm ready.
Yeah. Ryan, what about you? You do resolutions?
Yeah, I'm kind of along the same lines. Used to be I don't even know if I'm a believer in them. I guess just kind of fall in line with what everybody else does. And, this year I'm going to be healthier. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to lose 10 pounds. I'm going to get out of debt this year. And, 10, 15 days or maybe a day later, it's like, I don't really feel like doing that. So I kind of just make the plans. And I think through my debt journey, I've just learned, having a plan throughout the year, that's how you achieve the goals, not waiting until January. Yeah,
I'm the same way. I think a long time ago, I used to kind of believe in that whole New Year's resolution thing. And I know for some people they work, but we're going to talk about this here in today's podcast. But I mean, for me, it's like I'll hear people say, especially sometimes Roots members will say, oh, I messed up this fall, or I messed up November or whatever. And they'll say, oh, I'll get started again next year. And it's like, well, there's still a month, there's still 6 weeks, there's still 8 weeks. I mean, there's still so much time left of this year. Why waste that time and get a fresh start at the new year? Why not just start right now? And I finally kicked all that stuff. So yeah, when I'm ready to do something, very much like this podcast we're doing right now, it's like, hey, we're ready to go. We're going to start right now. We're not going to wait for the perfect time. Right.
Yep.
So today we're going to be talking all about, the brand new year and these New Year's resolutions as they relate to your finances, because 2020 is officially here. And are your finances ready for that? Every year, many people make a resolve to be better with their finances. They want to pay down debt. Maybe you want to save more money, build an emergency fund, pay cash for a vacation. Maybe you want to stop the paycheck-to-paycheck rat trap, or this rat trap. Maybe you want to, pay off a certain amount of debt, pay off a credit card. And we all start January, kind of what Ryan and Amber was just talking about, with the best of intentions. But quickly, we start to fall off. And even as early as the 2nd, 3rd, 4th week of January, by the end of the month, a lot of people have given up on their resolutions. And if you're listening to this show, more than likely, you're probably interested in getting on a plan with your finances. And we want to make sure that that doesn't happen to you. And tonight we're going to be sharing some pretty fantastic tips on how that you can make 2020 the best financial year of your lives. So guys, we're going to kick these tips off. The first one I want to talk about is it's not really in the what, but it's in the why you want to improve your personal finance. Because can the two of you share a little bit about maybe why you guys wanted to get on the road to financial freedom, or why you wanted to become debt free? Is how important was that for you guys, you think?
I feel like we were just fed up. We were at the end of our rope. Like for my husband and myself, we needed to make a change, and we jumped into Roots, and we just made that change. So for us, it was just being at the end of our rope.
Yeah, and I can totally relate to that. I think living that paycheck to paycheck lifestyle, when you get paid, you're happy and excited, and then a few days later, when the money's all gone, you're just praying you can get through to the next paycheck.
Right.
So being at the end of the rope. Also for us, it was providing a more stable marriage. I think for us, not that it was in shambles or anything, but money was just a hot button. When we got paid, we were happy. And a few days later, we were arguing because we had none. And that just got old. And for anybody listening, I can say huge improvement in our relationship and marriage once we got control of our finances. That was probably the big motivator for me.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. You two, both of you guys, because both of you guys are married. I'm married as well. How hard was it? Because we're talking about this why or purpose, why you want to get out of debt. How hard was it to get your partner or spouse on board with wanting to do something like, hey, let's forget about debt freedom. Let's just say, I want to get on a plan with our finances. Like, we need to get on a plan. We need to get on a budget. We need to save some money. We need to pay down some debt. Like, was it hard to get them on board with some of that?
I would say for us, no, because my husband is really supportive in almost anything I want to do.
That's because Paul's amazing.
He is amazing. Now, had it been the other way around and he approached me on the subject, I probably would have been a little more resilient on it.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't have wanted to do it.
Yeah, and I would say for us, it's I don't want to say it was hard. I think it was mostly for us kind of getting really back to this why. I think that's for us what really helped us figure it out is to get on board with what our why is. Because I think we had different opinions of why we wanted to get out of debt. And once we were both on board with that, then I think the actual getting out of debt or getting on board with finances was easy. But that why piece for us was important to know what each other wants and why we're doing all this, why we're going to put ourselves through this.
Yeah. Yep. Love that. It was the same for me. I can go back and I remember, a real turning point for me was when I had my son Noah. And I knew before then, obviously, that I was just terrible with money. And I knew I wasn't doing the right things, but it just didn't seem to matter all that much. But as soon as I had Noah, things turned on pretty quickly for me, especially as soon as I saw how much daycare was going to be. and that was kind of the realization for me, like, okay, I'm really messing this up. And now I got this kid and I'm going to have to show him how to do this stuff, because I certainly didn't want to have him, struggle the way that I was struggling. So that was part of my big why, was my son, and being able to not necessarily give him a better life, like with stuff and material possessions, but being able to teach him how to handle money. I think that for me was a big reason. The other reason is that I always wanted to run my own business, and little did I know it was going to be something like this. But I always wanted to run my own business, and it seemed like the older I got, the more money I would make, but the more debt I would have. Right. And I kind of just finally figured out, it's like, okay, I got to start doing some things differently, or I'm never going to realize that dream, because I've got just too many payments that are keeping me stuck at a job that isn't, fitting what I want to do anymore. So, but I think it's extremely important. I think this is probably, would you guys agree? It's probably one of the biggest pieces to the puzzle in taking control, not only of your finances, but really anything that you want to do in life. You've got to have a serious reason, because most things in life are going to be some hard work to change.
Oh, most definitely. And you have to be ready too. I think it's important to be just ready in that mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. I think it's the one thing, and I kind of shared earlier, it's our 8-year journey. I would say the first half of that was because our why was unclear, or was just wasn't convincing enough. It was we want to have more money, or we want to retire early, or we want to be able to retire to Florida. And those are all great goals and whys, but they're not detailed enough, because if I want to retire in Florida and live in the Keys, that's going to take a lot different plan than what maybe retiring in Florida in a different kind of part of Florida would be. So I think that's the thing that people have to understand with your why is it's not good enough just to say you want to be financially free. Like, you got to really dive deep into that.
Yeah. Put some meat in there. Yeah, absolutely. You talked about, having a plan, and, once you have your why kind of established, you have to have a plan of how you're going to put things together. Like, what needs to be put into place? What processes are you going to follow? Or what's the first thing that you need to work on in order to start reaching what that ideal life looks like? And what I have found with coaching hundreds of people individually is that a lot of people that are struggling with their finances also don't really have good, clear, set goals when it comes to their money. When I ask them, how much money would you guys find ideal to have in emergency fund savings? And usually it's crickets. How much money, like you said, Ryan, I want to retire to the Keys in Florida. When I asked that question with a lot of people who are struggling, and I was the same way at one time. I'm not trying to, be up on this high horse or anything, because I was the same way. But, asking people, what does your retirement look like? And a lot of people can't really give a clear answer to what retirement looks like. And it's really hard to reach whatever it is that you want retirement to look like if you don't have kind of a step-by-step plan, how much it's going to cost, how long is it going to take us to save. And that's for anything, a vacation, a car, college education for your kids. I mean, whatever it might be, right? So I think setting small obtainable goals is absolutely critical as soon as you establish that why. There's no question.
Yeah, I would have to definitely agree. I think it's important to have those stepping stones to get to the big goal.
Yeah, I kind of just look at it as, if you're going to run a marathon, if I said, hey, I want to run a marathon, I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and run that marathon. There's a lot of things, especially if I'm not a runner, if I've not really planned for it. I'm going
not a runner.
But yeah, think about it. I mean, if you're gonna train to run a marathon, for some people, if you're just completely not in shape to do that, it might take you a year or more to get ready for that. And you don't start out on day one by running a 26-mile marathon. You start out on day one by walking, and then walking and running, and then running, and then running more and more, and up until that point. And those are all those small goals that lead you to run the marathon. And it's very much the same with, debt or anything else. Is you got to have a plan to do all those little small steps that are going to eventually lead you there.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, I'm not much of a runner. I was born with asthma. Brian is my older brother, and he used to make fun of me a lot when we were kids.
It was unstudied back then.
Yeah, back in the 80s, asthma was a pretty new thing. I remember going to a friend's house, and they wouldn't let me in because they thought I was contagious.
Oh, no.
It's just asthma. It's not the flu, or it's not like, yeah. Times definitely have changed. There's no question. So, yeah, I mean, once you establish that why, having that plan, so important. So once you figure out, why you want to do this, start writing down some ideas. Okay, what are some steps that I need to take in order to help me reach that goal? Like, for instance, I mentioned starting my own business. So for me, before I even started thinking about opening my own business, I need to figure out how to take care of my financial mess that I had on my hands. So I knew I had to start with my finances, because in order to open a business, it's going to cost money to do that. And I needed to have some at my disposal in order to make that happen. So same thing with you guys in your life. When you're sitting down thinking about this, figure out those steps that you want to work, very much like Amber said. And it's kind of a good picture, is stepping stones almost. The next tip we want to share is really becoming aware. And I kind of just mentioned that in regards to, wanting to open my own business. I really had to get serious and honest with myself about where I currently was. Like, it is time to yank the skeletons out of the closet and show my disgusting, gross financial habits that's causing all this nonsense, right? And how did that, I know for me, man, that was not a fun experience, totaling up all my debt, knowing how much I had in credit cards, knowing how much I had in car payments and student loans and all this other stuff. And it was a gross feeling looking at the wasteful spending I was doing. That was not fun. But at the same time, it was a really good learning experience.
I think for me, it was just a heavy weight lifted off once we kind of put it on paper. And then we kind of took a minute and we were like, oh my gosh, we have this much debt. This is crazy. And, but it gave us more control, just seeing it and being aware of what was happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree.
Yeah. I think, and again, going back to our journey, it's easy to not put it all on paper because you don't want to deal with the gravity of the situation. It's easy to put a lot of it on paper and say, well, this is what we have to pay off. And then the other things that are out there, you just kind of pretend those don't exist. And we'll get to those later. We'll get to those after this. But I would totally agree with Amber. Once we just came to grips and put it all out there, then you just feel like, okay, now we honestly know what we're dealing with here.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that I've worked with that have had those same kind of feedback. A lot of people deal with financial stress. In fact, if you look at the American Psychological Association, money and personal finance is one of the leading causes of stress in the United States. It's one of the top things that we all worry about. And I think one of the biggest reasons why people do worry about it is because they don't have this plan. They're not really quite sure where they're at. And all of those kind of unknowns, it causes the stress and anxiety. Once you kind of put it all on paper and you start a monthly budget and a monthly cash flow plan, which we're going to talk about next as our next tip, I think a lot of that stress starts to, I wouldn't say it doesn't go away necessarily, but you're at least know exactly where you're at. And if you've got a good process and plan that you're going to follow to pay it off, I think it helps ease a lot of that anxiety as you get started for sure.
Right.
Definitely.
And I would take, the other big tip out of this that I would say is take ownership. I think it's easy to look at the things that have happened in our life and just feel like it's out of our control. Like I can't control this, or it's not my fault even. And I think for us, it's just owning it in whatever it is. Even if something happened, you could have got in an accident that caused some medical debt that isn't your fault. But if you own it, you're going to feel so much better to take responsibility and get it done. Otherwise it owns you and you're just never going to shake that. So I just would really highly recommend to people that no matter what it is, just own the debt. Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. So looking at the next tip we're going to share is all about having that monthly budget and that monthly plan. Can you guys share a little bit about your experience when you first started budgeting? Was it, how did that go?
It was so fun, Brad. No, I had to put all this on paper and figure out where my money was going. And I was shocked at first to find out how much we were eating out and spending money on useless things. So, but once we did that, once we put it all on paper in a budget, we were able to find out that we kind of we felt like we had a pay raise because we made a plan for where all of our money was going. So it almost felt like we had a little bit more money because we just refocused where we were spending it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. In fact, I remember you telling me that when you discovered that, and I was like, that's awesome. And, not everybody has that realization because all of us have kind of our own journeys and stuff, but there's been quite a few other people that we've coached and helped that have had that same kind of feedback. It's like, now that I'm kind of telling my money what to do, I'm able to tell it to go to where I want it to go. That's kind of a fun thing.
Yeah, and I think planning for it as well. It just, now that I look back and I laugh, but every year school would get ready to start and we'd be shocked that we have to spend money on school supplies and clothes and shoes. Like, oh, I had no idea we had to do this, even though every year for the last 19 years, we've had to do that. And so I think having that budget is just like you said, it's just a mindset shift. Instead of at the end of the month wondering where all your money went, you're just taking that at the beginning of the month and telling that money where to go, rather than, you deciding that going out to eat 8 times this month was more important than the shoes you need for school. So I totally agree.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think and if you're wondering and you're out there listening to this, you're like, okay, you guys are saying I need a budget. Well, what's the best way to kind of get started with that? Me personally, and Ryan and Amber, you guys can share a little bit of maybe about your experience and what helped you guys get started. But me personally, what helped me, and also what I coach other people to do, is the best part, or the best way to get started is again going back to that tip that we just shared about becoming aware and knowing where your money's going. Right now, we live in the age where you have access to all of your data. So, jump on your online banking, jump on your credit card accounts, wherever you're spending money, and go through and print out all of the statements that you have access to. And get out some highlighters and start highlighting and seeing where you're spending your money. How much roughly are you spending on gas every month? What are you spending on groceries? What are you spending on going out to eat? What are you spending on insurance premiums? What are you, and just gathering all of this information. So by no means, when you first start budgeting, are you going to sit down and just budget everything and you're going to get started? It's kind of a discovery process at first, and figuring out first where all that money's going. Once you know that, budgeting becomes a lot easier because you know your numbers a lot better.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we did. We went through our bank accounts and our statements and stuff, and really focused on where it was going and where we could adjust where we needed to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I think that was a huge eye opener for us in just the silly stuff, the coffee, the going out to eat, all of the things that you just don't think about when you swipe your card, whether that's, especially when it's a debit card. I mean, having a debit card is great, but it's also a double-edged sword when you can swipe it. And, we realized we were just spending a lot of money on stuff that wasn't necessarily a need. It was just a want.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're the budgeting by far probably one of the, I would say, top 3 things we get asked for help on. So if you don't know how to budget, that's totally okay. Right now, 78% of the population is living paycheck to paycheck. And a big reason for that is because most people aren't budgeting. In fact, almost 7 out of 10 people aren't living on a household budget. So we're actually going to dedicate an entire podcast show coming up here in the near future on budgeting. And we're going to share just kind of all 3 of our experiences and how we've made a budget work for us and how it's essentially helped all of us reach financial freedom and paying off all of our debt. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be back here with the rest of our tips here in today's podcast. Hang out with us for a little bit. Hey, imagine a life without payments and debt. I'm telling you, it's possible. Now, I recently launched an incredible free workshop that will walk you through the first steps to reaching a stress-free and debt-free life. Now, the information that we're sharing inside this workshop has helped people save and pay off millions of dollars. And we've had thousands of people now register for this workshop. Now, I was broke at one time too, but by following a simple process, I paid off all of my debts and I now live completely debt-free. And getting out of debt, it's not an easy road. This is hard work. So I know also what works and what doesn't work. And that's why we created this fantastic success path that's removing all of the confusion, and it's helping ordinary people have massive results. And I just want to share our success path with you in this workshop. Now, the goal of the workshop is really simple. We want to help you reduce stress. We want to provide you immediate and clear direction, also give you some really helpful insights, and give you some really cool tips to help you discover some of the first steps, some of the first things that you should work on as you get on the road to financial freedom. So head on over to therealdebtfreedad.com, click on tools and courses in the menu, and get free access to this course today. Hey guys, we are back with the Debt Free Dad podcast, and today we're going to be sharing tips on how you can make 2020 the best financial year of your life. We've already shared some pretty great tips. We've got about like 3 or 4 more that we're going to share with you here before we end today's show. The next one I want to talk about is, I love this one. Can you guys, man, when I got out of debt, there were so many people that made fun of me for that idea. Didn't believe it was possible, shot down the idea, thought I was crazy, told me I was always going to have credit cards, I was always going to have car payments. How was I expected to buy stuff, especially expensive stuff, if I'm not going to use debt? I mean, a big hurdle for me in getting out of debt was breaking away from how popular society manages their money and thinks about debt. I mean, it was pretty brutal there for quite a while.
I think I thought you were crazy when you told me that people would maybe think differently or like go against what we were doing, and it happened, and it didn't take too long either. When we were really focused on our debt and we wanted, to crunch it as fast as we could, we kind of stopped our socialing a little bit or slowed it down, and we had reached the end of our eating out budget, and we had friends that asked us, hey, let's go out to eat. We're going out tonight. And we said, no, it's just not in the budget. And her response immediately was, oh, your budget thing. So it hurt my feelings. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. It's a swear word for a lot of people. Budget.
Yeah.
I just saw it again today though, and we didn't even talk about this when we talked about budget, but I just saw it today in using it in the context. Budget was being used in the context of, if you're on a budget, it means that you don't have a lot of money and you're broke, right? And I can't freaking stand that. A budget, like Ryan said, all it means is you just have a freaking plan, right? So
yeah, I think it's, so you say, you had a lot of pushback from people. If you're just joining us, if you're just starting to listen, I am Brad's older brother, and I will tell you, I was one of those people that pushed against that. Not because I'm some sort of evil older brother. If you
don't listen to him.
If you think this way, if you think that other people are crazy for doing it, you're just normal. You are the product of what has been marketed to you for years and years and years, and your parents were taught this and marketed to, and it's the most marketed product in the history of mankind. So they have taught you to believe that it's normal. So to you it is, and to me it was. So to have someone come up and say, I'm going to get out of debt, like, what are you talking about? Like, that's just stupid. I mean, it's like me trying to tell you, hey, I've learned a new way to walk. It's like, well, there's only one way to walk. Why? What do you mean a new way to walk? So it was almost that foreign to me. So I totally agree. And I think the other side of this too is, I think social media these days has a huge presence in showing the best of what everybody supposedly has. But behind closed doors, you don't know. And I can tell you, I was one of those people that would put out what it looked like I had it all. And behind closed doors, it was just, oh, I hope we make it till payday.
Yeah.
So don't look at that and compare and say, well, they have all this and I should have all that. Because most people can't afford everything they put out there.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's probably, a lot of people say, oh, I'm not good at math when it comes to personal finance, or I just don't understand this interest stuff, or I don't understand investing or anything. Forget about all that. The number one way to have success is to commit to being different than everybody else. And if you can do that, you are going to win. You will. And that's the biggest thing to break away from, though, because socially speaking, money and debt play a big part in our social circle. As Amber was saying, if someone asks you out to dinner, or if you have a relationship where you're always out spending money, maybe a shopping buddy or a shopping person, or you go out to eat all the time with a specific person or whatever it might be, and all of a sudden now it's like, okay, I got to cut some of this stuff out because I got to start taking control of my money. You're going to find that that's going to hinder some of those relationships, and that's going to play a role in your future success and your finances. Do you hold steady your financial plan because of that why or purpose that we talked about earlier, or do you give in to what everybody else is doing and then eventually just kind of, I guess, the herd mentality? You just follow the crowd and follow what everybody else is doing. So we want you to be aware that this is going to happen. Like, you are going to be confronted on the social side when it comes to your money, especially as you first get started, because you're going to have people just like Amber described, oh, you're on that budget thing or whatever it might be. So you've got to be committed to being different. There's just no question about it. The other thing you got to be committed to is Ryan, dude, you need to talk about this. Talk about the fact that it's not a sprint, and it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, you pretty much have just kind of let the cat out of the bag with how long it's taken you guys.
Yeah, I think I think as you think through your debt, and this is not going to apply to everybody listening here. There are some people who may have been thrust into debt due to some accident or some big event that happened in your life to cause it. But a lot of us have arrived at where we're at due to years of doing things wrong. So for us, it was 20 some years of doing the wrong things with our money. So I think early on it was, we're going to hurry up and pay this debt off. But that mindset, it will backfire on you because it's not a hurry, which again goes back to the most important is the why. Because if you don't have that why, this is where the road gets long and tough. And it's like, well, I'll just go back to my old ways because it's going to take too long. It took us a total of 8 years. I would say we probably could have done it in 4 or 5 had we just kind of put our nose down and done it right. But regardless, 4 or 5 years seems like a really long time when it's day in and day out of paying off your debt. It can be a long road. But in the grand scheme of your life, what's 4 years? I think that's how we started to look at it. What is really, because that first 4 years, we were just like year 1, 2, 3, 4, and suddenly you're like, man, if we would have just done this, we would have already been done. But instead, now we got to start all over, and it took us another 4 years to finally do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I say that all the time. It's like, I'll see some of my Roots members and they'll pull some of these big numbers. I just had a Roots member join less than 12 months ago, and they've already saved and paid off $107,000. And, now that's not, that's a really big number, and we don't get those results all the time. But what if it was 20? What if it was 10? And I always tell people, what if you just got started today? Stop delaying and just get started today, because every day matters. And if you keep prolonging it, it's just going to take that much longer. Amber, you got a similar story. You guys, it was about what, 20 months for you guys?
Yeah, it took us 20 months and we thought we'd have it done in 12. So it did take us a little longer. We made some changes throughout the year and we just kind of made the decision to let it go a little bit longer. We knew it would happen, but we also knew that we had a life to live and we wanted to still live it and enjoy it, because I feel like if we would have cut everything out, it's kind of like a diet, right? If you cut everything out all at once, it's going to be really hard to resist the temptation, and you might fall down and just give up altogether. So we just took it a little bit slowly.
Amber gave us all of a whooping, man. Here she is with her 20 months, $40,000 paid off, and it took me 4 to 5 years. And and Ryan, you're at Ryan, do you know roughly what you guys are when you guys are debt free? Like how much have you guys paid off?
Like $160,000.
Yeah, that's incredible. Now, keep in mind, Ryan. Just to give a little backstory, Ryan did sell a house, and that helped out big time, right?
Well, that's not included in that. If we talk about reducing that, then we'd be more in that 260 total.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Good for you. Those are some big numbers, man. That's awesome. Yeah. Good for you guys. So yeah, just a reminder again, that's again why we're sharing these tips with you, because going back to that why or purpose, that's why it's so important that you get really clear on what it is that you want, because this whole idea of fixing your finances in 30 or 60 or 90 days, all for a low price of $19.95, it does not exist. And you are going to be really disappointed if you try to take that approach. You've got to look at this as this is a marathon. And even when you become debt free, and you guys probably talk about this too, it's still a race. Like, it's not over. Now it's being committed to saving and investing and building the future that you want to have. And that takes time and patience. None of that stuff happens overnight. So I think the growth personally is in that marathon. It's in that process. That's where you're going to grow as a person. That's where you're going to grow as a relationship. That's when you're going to grow as a family. I think that was probably the best part of the whole process was that growth for us.
Yeah, you learn to you learn to have like better behaviors, and you just start to make different decisions the more you do it and the more you practice. And we always we'll be out and about, and my husband will be like, "Oh, should we get this?" And then we'll have it and we'll grab it, and then it's like, yeah, we don't really need this, and we put it back. We put so much stuff back; it's crazy. So it's having that kind of marathon and just doing step by step really helps you change your behaviors and keeps you focused and keeps you just getting to that goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Hey, we're going to talk a little bit about sacrifices. What were some big sacrifices that you guys made? Let's talk about let's think about your biggest sacrifice. What was the biggest sacrifice that you guys gave up in order to win long term when it comes to your money? Like, I've got mine. I know what mine is, but what are they for you?
Wow. We sacrificed, I don't know about big, but like just like our
doesn't have to be big.
social life.
Yeah, maybe it's the
Like,
small stuff. Yeah.
For us, I think it was a bunch of small stuff.
Okay.
Because we still traveled. We still made, put money aside for our big travel and stuff like that. So for us, it was more the social day-to-day life that was hard to kind of say no to from time to time.
Yeah. So you guys had probably more what I like to call is death by 1,000 cuts. See, a lot of people will focus on the big purchases, but it can be those little small purchases that can come and bite you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for us, and it took us a while to get there. We didn't come out of the gate, but I kind of mentioned the house just previously to this. That was probably our big sacrifice. I mean, we loved the house we were in. We really did. And there'd be a lot of people that might say you didn't have to sell it. And I don't, maybe we didn't have to, but for us, it was kind of the catalyst for us that really put us on the journey. Once that happened and we did that, it was game on, because it was like, we're not giving up what we love, which is the house, to just then go back in debt. So it really was the big thing that was the driver of getting us to where we're at.
Yeah.
So I'm not advocating to anybody listening, like, well, I'm not selling my house. I'm not saying you should do that. It took us a couple years to get to that decision point, where we felt like that was the right decision for us. So you have to decide what's right for you. But for us, that was the biggest thing we did. And new cars. I love new cars. We've had new cars our whole life. We sold a car. I drove a $3,000 car for a couple of years. That was the other big thing. And we haven't bought a new car since. We bought a used car, but nothing new.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the big one for me, was the car. That's what I can go back to and really kind of pinpoint what made the biggest difference in getting out of debt the fastest was getting rid of those giant car payments. I went and sold a brand new, well, it was brand new when I bought it. It wasn't brand new when we sold it, but it was still a really nice car. And that freed up $500 a month. And Ryan, maybe one day we'll have a podcast about this, but I mean, mom and dad always taught us like, oh, you should have a new car. It's the only way to go. And I think that's where we got that from, is how how mom and dad did this stuff. And I always was just like, I was the same way. It's like, oh, I got to have a new car. Old cars are unreliable. So like, this was like, for me, was that step out of like, I'm really stepping outside of my comfort zone. And not only did I step out, but I stepped way back into 1996. I bought myself a Toyota Corolla. And this thing was an amazing car. It still is one of my most favorite cars. I had to get rid of it just because it was not worth repairing anymore. But that was my statement car. Very much like you, Ryan, guys selling the house. Is like, this was my statement card. Like, this was it. Like, you make fun of this thing all you want. This thing is taking me to financial freedom. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care at all. And to this day, my wife still says that's why she loves me, just because of that car. So for me, it worked out really well. But yeah, you've got to, like Ryan said, it's early in the game for some of you who are just starting out. And for some of you who maybe been on this journey for a little while, is that the point of this tip is just to get you comfortable with the idea that you're going to have to make some sacrifices in order to win. So think about that. Just write it down. You don't have to make any sacrifices today, but what are some short-term sacrifices that we can make that will allow us to win long-term? All right. And I think changing that mindset over time, like Ryan said, they got to the point where they were ready to make that sacrifice. And you'll get to the point where you're ready to make sacrifices too. So those are our tips for today. And I think we got I think we had about 9 or 10 tips that we could share with you. And again, write those down, start putting some of these things into practice. And by doing so, you will start to reduce a lot of financial stress as you go throughout 2020. And 1 year from now, if you're practicing these habits on a regular basis and continuing to listen to our show, I think you're going to find that your finances will drastically improve with just in a little as time as just 1 year. You will be shocked and amazed at the difference that it will make by practicing some of these things that we are talking about. So we're going to move on to the question of the day. Hang out for just a second. So guys, that sound means that we're going to take the question of the day. So if you've got a question that you would like us to answer on our upcoming podcast, send us over that question to Brad, that's BRAD, at therealdebtfreedad.com. That's Brad at therealdebtfreedad.com. Send us your question, And maybe we'll be featuring that on an upcoming podcast where all three of us will put in some input on what we think you should do based on what you are asking. Today's question, it's a good one. So this is what the question is. I was asked to be in a wedding, but I really can't afford it. I'm already behind in bills, but I'm afraid if I say no, I will hurt this person. I also don't want my dirty laundry in public. It's embarrassing. What do you all think I should do? That's a good one. What do you guys think? Ooh.
That's a tough question, Brad.
It is, isn't it?
Definitely. I mean, if I were this person, normally when you're getting invited to stand in somebody's wedding, you're pretty close to them. So I feel like they wouldn't judge you if you opened up to them and shared with them that, you just really couldn't afford it. And maybe you could offer other ways to support them in their big day, like helping out with hall decorations or helping out with other things that day that can just take stress off of the bride and groom.
Yeah, I think I think those are great points. I mean, this is hard. I mean, I'm a guy, so I have a different I just probably don't have as caring of a response.
That's why Amber's on this show.
No, I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way. I think as you look at our show today, I think number one, I would probably ask this person, what's your why? Why do you want to get out of debt? What's your goal? And if you're struggling with saying something to this person, maybe your why isn't convincing enough. Because I know once we reached our why, there was pretty much nothing nobody could do to make me, I'd just tell you no. Because my why was that important at that point. So I would ask you to go back and do that. The other thing I would also say to this person is you don't want your dirty laundry in public. Reality is for the people who aren't in debt, we know how you're doing it. And for the people who are in debt, they know how you're doing it. So you're normal to 78% of the people at that wedding, and to the other 22%, we already know. Like we wouldn't be surprised if you said that you're living paycheck to paycheck. We get it. We've done it. So you're not really going to be, you're going to be embarrassed for yourself. They're not going to care because most of them are doing the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I think, and I learned this too, is that, I went through a pretty tough spot back in my early 30s, lost my house and going through foreclosure. I mean, that's pretty embarrassing. I mean, they put that stuff in the newspaper. That's not fun, right? So anyone could read that and they can see my name, Brad Nelson's going through foreclosure. That's not fun, right? But at the same time, I think, Ryan's exactly right. It wasn't nearly as embarrassing as I thought it was because there's a lot of people out there dealing with the same stuff. But again, we don't want to be normal. All right. So we don't want to be like everybody else. I think my take on this, and I think both of you guys had some great points. I think they're great. I think you go with any of them. But one of the takes that I have is I'm always a big fan of being proactive and what can I do to make it happen? What can I do to go out and make the money in order to be a part of this event if it's that important to me, if it's that important to them? Especially if you've got some time on your side. I mean, this day and age, I mean, you think about your cell phone, your smartphone. I mean, there's so many different ways, your job, picking up a second job. There's so many different ways to make extra money. And, throw some of that money at the wedding expense. And even sitting down, I mean, like Amber discovered when she did her budget, she discovered that they had extra money or more money to do more of what they love. You may find the same thing by sitting down and actually having a plan for your finances and really kind of going through today's tips that we shared. So I would encourage you to look at ways to be resourceful and find ways to make extra income. And for most weddings, unless it's a destination wedding, I think it'll probably be pretty doable. Again, I'm thinking that you have time on your side at this point. So.
And I think we all would agree, or maybe we wouldn't. I'll throw this out, but I think we would all agree I think my advice would be, no matter what, do not go deeper into debt to be in a wedding. Either figure out a way to pay for it, like Brad said, or you're going to have to say no. But I would highly guard against just you don't want to say no, so you're going to go into more debt.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I would totally agree. Yep. In fact, I did a long time ago. I actually had this happen to me, and I am a guy. And this person asked me to be in their wedding, and then originally said that they didn't need me to be in the wedding, which I was fine with. I didn't take offense to that. I was like, okay, no big deal. I was just one of the boring ushers, right? I mean, you're just being asked out of being nice, right? Well, anyway, so they told me I didn't have to be in it. Well, a couple of days before the wedding, I get a phone call saying, I screwed up. I need you in the wedding.
Oh,
and
no.
I need you to pay for the tux. I'm like, I can't do it. I was like, I had to stick to my guns for this. Like, I couldn't do it. They ended up having to pay. They ended up paying for the tux for me to be in the wedding because I couldn't do it. I didn't have the money, but it was part of sticking to the plan. And it's like, I can't. It's going to mean that I'm going to have to get my credit card out and swipe my card. It's like, I'm not going to do it. Too bad, so sad. But again, that's a different situation. They asked, then they retracted, then they asked again. It's like, that's your loss. All right, guys. Great show. Thank you guys for joining us here again. We're going to see everyone here next week for a brand new episode of the Debt Free Dad podcast. Again, 2020 is here. Start implementing some of these ideas and some of these tips into your life. And I promise you, a year from now, your life is going to be a lot less stressful. You're going to have a lot more happiness. And you're going to be well on your way to a debt-free and financially free life. We will see you all here at our next show. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Debt Free Dad podcast. For more free resources to kick debt and financial stress, head over to therealdebtfreedad.com.